Hey everyone, I'm Will, and welcome back to the channel. Have you ever walked out of a movie feeling like it changed you just a little? Here, we explore that idea, the hidden blueprints inside the stories we love. We look at how films can quietly teach us what to expect from the world, guiding how we feel and what we're willing to accept, often without us ever noticing. It's a process that can leave us feeling powerless, as if the big problems can only ever be solved by a special few. But seeing the blueprint changes everything. Once you understand the pattern, you start to take that power back. And that's our mission here, to read the blueprints and then imagine how to build something better. So stick with me, because after we break down this film's hidden message, we'll explore a version of the story that, instead of aiming to control, is designed purely to empower. Today, we descend into the shadows of Gotham City to deconstruct Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight Rises. This film presents itself as the epic conclusion to a hero's journey, a final battle for the soul of a city. But its underlying psychological function is far more specific and instructive. It serves as a powerful piece of conditioning that trains the audience to accept the logic of the noble lie and to yearn for the return of a savior figure in times of chaos. It is a story designed to make us comfortable with a peace built on deception and to reaffirm the belief that true order can only be restored through extreme sacrifice and unaccountable power, guiding us through a cycle of manufactured peace and engineered chaos that leaves us with the feeling that a state of exception is the only viable response to a world consumed by fear. The film's conditioning begins by building its entire world on a foundation of fear, using it as the justification for a new form of systemic control. Rather than plunging into action, The Dark Knight Rises begins by showing us a city lulled into silence by a foundational lie. 8 years have passed, and Gotham is experiencing an era of unprecedented peace built upon the Dent Act, a piece of legislation that has given law enforcement sweeping powers to dismantle organized crime. The film immediately establishes that this tranquility is a direct result of a lie. The lie that Harvey Dent was a martyred hero, while the city's true savior, Batman, was cast out as a murderer. This initial setup is the first and most crucial piece of programming. It presents a powerful argument that a stable society can be, and perhaps must be, built upon a carefully managed deception. The viewer is invited to see the positive results of this noble lie, a clean, safe city, and to subconsciously weigh that outcome against the moral cost of the truth. This theme is embodied in the weary figure of Commissioner Gordon, a man tormented by the weight of this founding fiction. He carries a speech that tells the real story, a truth he feels the city deserves to hear, yet he cannot bring himself to deliver it. By showing a good man like Gordon participating in the cover-up, the film normalizes the idea of moral compromise for the sake of a greater good, suggesting that leaders must sometimes bear the burden of deceit to protect the populace. When his unsent speech is later found by Bane, Gordon's own words articulate the film's core thesis on this theme, revealing his intention that someday the truth must be learned, but learned as something to be wielded with purpose. As he wrote, "The truth must be learned as a weapon." This line crystallizes the conditioning. Truth is not presented as an inherent right or a foundation for a healthy society, but as a dangerous tool to be managed and deployed strategically. We are thus trained from the outset to accept a fear-based worldview as the justification for extreme measures, making us comfortable with the idea that the suspension of normal principles is not only acceptable but desirable, as long as it keeps the monsters at bay. Once this foundation of controlled peace is established, the film introduces a catalyst designed to shatter it, presenting a seductive but ultimately hollow illusion of rebellion. Bane's arrival is not merely that of a conventional villain. He presents himself as a revolutionary, a liberator for the oppressed people of Gotham. This is a critical element of the film's programming, as it constructs a detailed and charismatic image of revolution, only to later reveal it as a meticulously controlled demolition designed to serve a hidden nihilistic agenda. The film trains the viewer to be deeply suspicious of any movement that claims to speak for the people and to associate populist uprisings with terror and deception. Bane's strategy begins with a symbolic strike against the city's financial elite, followed by his grand public performance at a football stadium. After trapping most of Gotham's police force underground, Bane takes to a microphone, reveals the truth about Harvey Dent, and then makes his revolutionary promise. He proclaims, "We take Gotham from the corrupt, the rich, the oppressors of generations who have kept you down with myths of opportunity, and we give it back to you, the people." This speech is a masterclass in revolutionary rhetoric, appealing to the genuine grievances of those left behind. The film allows the viewer to feel the seductive pull of his words, to understand why the disenfranchised citizens of Gotham might rally to his cause. Having presented this compelling image, the film then meticulously demonstrates how this revolution is a complete sham. The People's Tribunal, presided over by Scarecrow, is a kangaroo court offering only death or exile. The liberation of Blackgate Prison unleashes hardened criminals upon the city. The viewer is guided step by step to associate the language of revolution with lies, and the actions of the liberated with mindless violence and mob rule. The programming teaches a powerful lesson. Be wary of those who promise to give power to the people, for their rebellion is likely a mask for something far more sinister, suggesting that even a flawed, corrupt order is preferable to the terrifying chaos that comes with its collapse. With Gotham plunged into a state of controlled chaos and its institutional protections shattered, the film turns to its central conditioning theme: the necessity of the hero as a societal pacifier. The 8 years of peace have made the city and Bruce Wayne himself soft. Bruce is introduced as a recluse, broken physically and spiritually. The city, having cast out its savior, has forgotten its need for one. The narrative arc is dedicated to painstakingly re-establishing that need, conditioning the audience to yearn for the return of Batman as the only possible solution to a problem the film has deliberately made insurmountable by conventional means. The established order is shown to be completely impotent. The police are trapped, the government is helpless, and the military can only quarantine the city. This narrative choice creates a vacuum that only a figure outside the system can fill, guiding the viewer to a single conclusion: we need a hero. The film then focuses on Bruce Wayne's personal struggle with his loyal butler, Alfred, pleading with him to let go of the Batman persona. Alfred's fear is rooted in love, and in a moment of deep emotional resonance, he confesses his greatest fear of seeing Bruce die. He says, "I've sewn you up, I've set your bones, but I won't bury you. I've buried enough members of the Wayne family." This plea, however, is framed as a loving but misguided attempt to hold the hero back from his destiny. Alfred's departure is presented as a necessary, painful step in Bruce's journey to reclaim his power. The programming suggests that personal happiness is an obstacle the true hero must overcome. When Batman finally does return, his appearance is treated as a moment of near-religious significance, and the audience is meant to feel a profound sense of cathartic relief. This entire arc functions as a powerful pacification technique, teaching us that when systems fail, our role is to wait and pray for the return of a singular, powerful savior, reinforcing a deep-seated psychological dependence on heroic figures to solve our problems for us. After his triumphant return, Batman is immediately and brutally defeated by Bane, which ushers in the film's next major conditioning theme: the idea that true strength is born not from healing trauma, but from re-embracing and re-weaponizing it. Bruce Wayne is sent to the pit, a subterranean prison where the only hope is a taunting view of the sky high above. This setting becomes the crucible for his transformation. He is forced to watch the suffering of his city on a television screen, a torment designed to break him completely. In this state of powerlessness, he must rebuild himself, but his psychological recovery is the key. An old prisoner explains to Bruce that he failed because he no longer fears death, and this has made him weak. The prisoner's advice is a direct statement of the film's philosophy on strength, as he tells Bruce, "You do not fear death. You think this makes you strong. It makes you weak. How can you move faster than possible, fight longer than possible, without the most powerful impulse of the spirit? The fear of death." This is a profound and deeply unsettling piece of conditioning. The film explicitly states that the path to reclaiming one's power is to re-engage with one's most primal fear. Hope and love are presented as insufficient motivators. To become the hero again, Bruce must once again become terrified of dying. He succeeds only when he makes the climb without the safety rope, powered by the visceral animalistic fear of falling. Rather than treating trauma as something to soothe and mend, the story transforms it into a force to be weaponized. It teaches the audience that strength comes from our broken places, and that our deepest fears are not obstacles to be overcome, but tools to be sharpened, repackaging our pain as the necessary fuel for heroic action. As the film moves into its final act, the focus shifts from the singular hero back to the trapped police force of Gotham, whose journey serves as the film's final lesson in the virtues of obedience and emotional detachment. For months, thousands of officers have been trapped underground, a literal representation of the institutional order being buried. When they finally emerge, they are not a disorganized mob seeking revenge. They are a disciplined army, ready to follow orders and march toward their likely deaths. This sequence conditions the viewer to admire and value uniformed, hierarchical obedience as the highest form of civic duty. Deputy Commissioner Foley, who had previously been a critic of Batman, embodies this transformation. He chooses to lead his men in a seemingly suicidal charge against Bane's heavily armed forces, rallying them with a simple, powerful call to their institutional identity. He yells, "You're cops! You're part of a tradition! Now get in the damn car!" There is no debate, only the appeal to tradition and the command to obey. This moment is framed as incredibly heroic. The programming here is twofold. First, it presents a clear hierarchy of heroism where the police's strength comes from their unity and willingness to follow a chain of command. Second, it trains the viewer in emotional detachment. We are not asked to dwell on the individual lives of these men. Instead, we see them as a unified block, a symbol of order moving against chaos. Their potential deaths are abstracted into a noble collective sacrifice. This is reinforced by Batman's own final act of flying the bomb away from the city. Both sacrifices are presented as necessary and honorable, conditioning us to see self-annihilation in service of the system as the ultimate heroic gesture. As the dust settles and a statue of Batman is unveiled in a grateful Gotham, The Dark Knight Rises completes its psychological programming. The film, taken as a whole, is a masterclass in conditioning the viewer to accept and even desire a state of permanent exception. It guides us through a carefully orchestrated cycle. A fragile peace built on a lie is shattered by an engineered rebellion, which in turn creates a vacuum of power that only an unaccountable savior can fill. This savior must then re-weaponize his own trauma to become strong enough, and his final victory is achieved through a sacrifice that reaffirms the need for such figures. The emotional end state the movie leaves us in is one of somber relief and resigned acceptance. We are relieved that the chaos is over, but we are left with the deep-seated feeling that our world is inherently dangerous and that our institutions are fundamentally inadequate. We are conditioned to accept that noble lies are a necessary tool of governance, that populist movements are a terrifying threat, and that our only true hope lies in placing our faith in extraordinary individuals who operate outside the bounds of law. The film doesn't just entertain, it constructs a world view, leaving us with a nervous system that is more accepting of authority, more suspicious of rebellion, and more dependent on the idea of a hero coming to save us. A more human and empowering version of this story would have reversed this core programming. In this alternate narrative, Bain still exposes the truth about the Dent Act, plunging the city into a crisis of legitimacy. However, instead of descending into chaos, this revelation becomes a catalyst for genuine change. John Blake, representing a new generation of law enforcement, refuses to accept the logic of the noble lie. Instead of waiting for Batman, he begins to organize other young officers and community leaders, arguing that the only way to save Gotham is for the city to save itself, honestly and transparently. Bruce Wayne, broken in the pit, would not be inspired by the fear of death. Instead, his moment of clarity would come from realizing that his entire mission as a singular vigilante was part of the problem, creating a power vacuum and a culture of dependency. His escape would be fueled by a desire to return to Gotham as a citizen guided by purpose, rather than a savior marked by fear. The climax would not be a violent charge of obedient police officers led by Batman. It would be a scene of mass civil disobedience. The citizens of Gotham, inspired by Blake's movement, would refuse to be Bane's pawns, forming human barricades and non-violently resisting his mercenaries. Bruce Wayne would return as himself, using his resources to support this citizen-led movement. The film would close with the image of a city beginning to rebuild, slowly, painfully, not around legend, but around truth, shared agency, and the steady hands of those willing to take part in their own future. Thanks for tuning in. These stories hold more power than we often realize, and when we examine them together, we begin to reclaim something. If this gave you a new way to see, consider sharing it. And if you're ready for the next step, the next story is one you won't want to miss.